Painkillers, blood thinners, and chemotherapy drugs are just some of the substances that are found in your drinking water. There's new information that some drugs are ending up in our water at levels never seen before.
There's something happening to the rainbow darter, a tiny fish that lives in the rivers of southern Ontario. If they're downstream from a sewage treatment plant, the male fish turn into females.
If you expose them to wastewater, they will feminize. They will have eggs in the testes.
What's causing the males to develop eggs? Human hormones, residue from prescription drugs that are flushed into the river. Painkillers, blood thinners, chemotherapy agents, hormones, antibiotics. If we swallow it, scientists can find it in the water.
Some of the drug comes in us and through us and out of us totally unchanged. So we actually have active drugs going into the waterway.
The study of First Nations communities found levels of 3 prescription drugs in one southern Ontario river that were the highest in North America. And an unpublished Health Canada survey of tap water across the country found traces of prescription drugs in drinking water.
We have to be concerned because there's a mixture of these drugs that we're being exposed to in drinking water, and so that's some cause for concern.
Die Wasserversorger tun ihr Bestes, sie probieren ihr Bestes. Wir haben einen Schwemmkanal und dieser Schwemmkanal, da kommt ja nur noch konzentriertes Abwasser rein. Es kommt in die Klärwerke klären es einigermaßen, aber keine Mikroplastiken, keine Medikamentenrückstände, gar nichts. Und das Wasser, das dann die Kläranlagen verlässt, bezeichnet sogar der bayerische konservative Rundfunk als explodierte Apotheke. Jeder Wasserversorger wird dir sagen, dass sein Wasser super ist, unbedenklich. Man muss eines sehen, die Europäische Wirtschaftsgemeinschaft hat einen Leitwert empfohlen 1980 von 400 Mikrosiemens. Heute ist er bei 2790. Also am besten ist es selber testen. Und da gibt es ein einfaches Gerät, das heißt TDS. Also gelöste Stoffe. Im Jahr 1950 hat die französische Regierung der Universität Paris den Auftrag gegeben, untersuche mal, warum in gewissen Gebieten Frankreichs die Leute sehr früh sterben und sehr oft krank sind, während sie in anderen Gebieten, im Gebiet um Wolvik in dem Fall, sehr gesund sind und wenig Kosten fürs Sozialsystem verursachen. Nach 24 Jahren hat er das Ergebnis vorgelegt und er hat gesagt, es ist alles eine Frage des Wassers, des Trinkwassers. Und er hat auch Qualitätsbestimmungen gemacht, weil wir sind ja 70% Wasser und alle Flüssigkeiten sind Blut, Speichel und Urin. In dem bewegt sich ja der ganze Stoffwechsel. Und er hat gesagt, Wasser bis 84, 85 TDS packt der menschliche Organismus. Vom Himmel kommt es mit 0. Ich messe damit natürlich keine Bakterien, keine Viren, keine Medikamentenrückstände, Fungizide. Alles, was wir finden, die ganze Apotheke. Aber die leitenden Stoffe, Metalle, Salze, Ionen, die Mineralien. Wasser ist ein Magnet. Und vom Himmel kommt es mit 0 ppm. Also ganz reinstes, sauberes Wasser. Natürlich zähle ich Chemtrails in diesem einfachsten Messverfahren nicht dazu. Von dem, was vom Himmel kommt, bis zu dir in die Hauswasserleitung, dann hat es einen ewig langen Weg. Die Leitungen sind 10, 20, 50, 100 Jahre alt. Und Wasser ist ja Magnet. Jetzt stell dir vor, du würdest das Wasser, was wirklich super, sauber und rein ist, in die Hauswasserleitung geben, bis es bei dir in deinem Glas ist, wäre es total braun, weil Wasser ja saugt. Wasser ist ein Putzmittel und je sauberer Wasser, umso mehr nimmt es auf. Und deshalb werden auch sehr oft Kalk als Fällungsmittel beigegeben und wird der Bevölkerung als wertvolles Calcium verkauft. Also das, sage ich, ist die Massenverblödung, dass hier einfach Stoffe zugesetzt werden, damit einfach das nicht korrosiv wird. Es hat dramatische Folgen. 70% ist Wasser und die Qualität deines Lebens wird abhängig gemacht von der Qualität des Wassers, das du trinkst. Auf der Flucht vor der eigenen Verunreinigung hat der Mensch begonnen, Löcher zu bohren. Das nennt man Mineralwasser. Dieses Wasser halte ich für die menschliche Genetik nicht geeignet, außer es kommt aus einer artesischen Quelle aus eigener Kraft. Es gibt ja die Trinkwasserverordnung und getestet werden 55 Stoffe. Finden tut man zwischen 2 und 30.000, also 2% werden getestet. Bei der Mineralwasserverordnung testest du 16 Stoffe von wie viel tausend, aber 16 Stoffe werden getestet mit anderen Kriterien. Getestet werden nur einzelne Stoffe, aber die Wechselwirkungen überhaupt nicht. Also es ist ein Milliardenbusiness. Letztes Jahr 3,2 Milliarden wurden umgesetzt mit Löcher bohren und Wasser reinzapfen und abfüllen und dem Konsumenten verkaufen. 12 Stunden nach der Abfüllung wird getestet und danach nie mehr wieder. Und die Keime explodieren dir bei der Wärme. Drum steht ja immer drauf, kühl, dunkel, trocken, lichtgeschützt. Die Summe der Fremdstoffe. Oder halt eben, wie gesagt, Sulfat ist das beste Beispiel. Oder Natrium oder Fluor und was da ist. Und das wird noch als gut verkauft. Das Thema Mineralien ist extrem wichtig für unsere Gesundheit, aber aus dem Wasser nicht. Je sauberer Wasser, umso mehr kann es aufnehmen, je mehr Energie es hat und je mehr diese Aufnahmefähigkeit ist. Die besten Wassertester, die Wahrheit liegt in der Natur, liegt Hunde, Katzen, Wachstum von Pflanzen. Jede Pauschalierung ist schlecht und das gilt auch für Wasser und für Wasserfilter genauso. Dass teuer gut ist, stimmt beim Wasser überhaupt nicht. Nichts glauben, selber prüfen, selber nachschauen.
Wir haben heute einmal mehr gesehen, dass dieser Präsident die Weltordnung, wie sie existiert, umkrempeln möchte. Wir werden in ein Konzert der Mächte, so scheint es mir, hineingeraten. Und er hat Wladimir Putin heute auf diese Bühne zurückgehoben. Wir müssen uns erinnern, Barack Obama hatte Russland zu einer Regionalmacht erklärt. Und heute wurde dem russischen Präsidenten geradezu der rote Teppich ausgelegt. Wir sollten nicht glauben, dass dieses Amerika Trumps das einzige Amerika ist. Es gibt schon eine große innenpolitische Krise und es ist völlig ungewiss, in was das reinführen wird. Es ist sehr gut möglich, dass mit diesem Tag auch der Widerstand wächst, der dieser Politik in den USA entgegengebracht werden wird.
We hope to see the first steps towards overcoming the current critical situation in our country's relations. This approach has to be based on a commitment to develop mutually beneficial cooperation, taking into account the interests of the other countries as well. And these factors together can create the right environment for cooperation. We need fair competition in politics and in the global economy. Unfortunately, we see that competition is not always fair. Russia has never sought to use its relations, its interactions with certain countries against other countries, against third-party states. This has never been the case, so such concerns sound rather strange. As you know, our relations are in quite a poor state, and Russia was not the one who initiated this downturn. We hope there is a political will to normalize relations. NATO is an instrument of confrontation. It was constructed specifically for the purposes of confrontation. From the very beginning, this has been the rationale behind the alliance. So when the alliance openly calls Russia a potential enemy and increases its budget, this indicates that Russia needs to stay alert, and it does.
So we're protecting Germany, we're protecting France, we're protecting all of these countries, and then numerous of the countries go out and make a pipeline deal with Russia where they're paying billions of dollars into the coffers of Russia. Germany is totally controlled by Russia because they were getting from 60 to 70% of their energy from Russia and a new pipeline. Germany is a captive of Russia. They pay billions of dollars to Russia, and now we have to defend them against Russia.
Численность американского контингента на базах ФРГ составляет порядка 35 тысяч человек. Вот это к вопросу, кто по-настоящему контролирует Германию. У нас в Германии бизнес, а у Соединенных Штатов в Германии военные базы.
I think that Trump can better be understood as a businessman than as a person who is particularly ideological when it comes to international relations. He's speaking on behalf of the US oil and gas industry, the petroleum industry, trying to convince Europe to substitute Russian petroleum for US gas, and basically capturing the European market for US gas exports. But he doesn't necessarily want a constructive relationship between Europe and Russia, because that relationship would mean a bigger difficulty, particularly the Nord Stream pipeline, which he's talking about, will mean an obstacle for US petroleum exports to Europe. The big question is, should Europe raise its military spending to please Donald Trump and his US allies? I think that's a whole different question. And also, especially if we enter into the discussion about who does the NATO benefit. Even in the 90s, NATO worked in many cases as a way of sugarcoating US military aggression. For instance, in the case of Yugoslavia, where it was difficult or it was impossible for the US to get UN Security Council backing for some of its military actions. But then you had NATO step in to at least give it a veneer of being a multilateral military action and not a unilateral US military aggression. So I don't think there's any doubt that NATO's function has been to prop up US global hegemony. Let's just have a quick look at NATO's two last interventions that were Afghanistan, the regime change war in Afghanistan, and the regime change war in Libya. Both of these wars have caused massive havoc in Europe's immediate neighborhood. We are talking about a massive increase in Islamist terrorism right outside the doorsteps of Europe, and a huge refugee crisis. Now, of course, those countries who were invaded are the principal victims, and the refugees are the principal victims of this. But let's not forget that this has also had a very high price for Europe in terms of a sharp increase in the number of Islamist terrorist attacks, and the refugee crisis that Europe has not really been able to handle in a constructive way. In that sense, it's clear that Europe has paid a very high price. And I'm not sure how we can defend Trump's thesis that NATO in that sense has protected Europe. I mean, to me, it's pretty obvious that these interventions have created more security problems and economic problems and other political problems for Europe than they have solved. And they've certainly created greater problems for Europe than for the US.
Иммигрантов в Германию и Европу запустила Меркель. Это проблема, разногласия, по которой грозят единству и в Германии, и в Европе. Проблема связана и в Германии, и в Европе лишь с одним именем – Меркель. Противодействие Ангеле Меркель в Европе становится все более жестким и беспощадным. Интересные цифры. Полгода назад американский исследовательский центр Pew опубликовал прогноз, по которому к 50-му году доля мусульман в Германии, Англии, Франции и Австрии вырастет до 18-20%. Это если иммиграционная политика останется неизменной. В Швеции, если ничего не менять, мусульман к середине века будет 30%. Итак, что в сухом остатке на сегодня? Американцам Европа нужна прежде всего как участник блока НАТО, а еще покупатель американского оружия и дорогущего американского сжиженного газа. Евросоюз как конкурирующее новообразование Трампу не нужен. Вот и оказался Евросоюз в дурацком положении. Меркель говорит, что надо вставать на свои ножки, а Юнкер, что следует противопоставить себя США. Но сил нет. Нет, потому что с Россией разругались, введя бессмысленные санкции. Сил нет, потому что сами внутри грызутся из-за мигрантов, приглашенных Меркель. Добавим сюда Брексит со всеми потерями в общем бюджете. И станет ясно, что у некогда европейской мамочки Меркель задача по сохранению Евросоюза не из простых.
Since the fall of the Communist Revolution in 1989, the political history of the Western world has been dominated by a battle between two opposing political theories. The globalist or New World Order theory that strives for the destruction of nationalism through open borders and mass immigration. This decade, the immigration wave has been George Soros's spear at the heart of nationalism, sowing chaos wherever it goes. Soros threw billions into this invasion effort in Europe. The goal was to overwhelm the slumbering nations of Europe, laying the seeds of their destruction of their national identities by simultaneously buying off their entrenched politicians and the press, their news sources, before they knew what hit them. And it almost worked. Marcel de Graaf, an outspoken member of the European Parliament from the Netherlands, recently outlined the Soros plan and its already visible evil fruits.
The future of Europe will be bright after the collapse of the EU. And we are now witnessing the death struggle of this failed project. We see it in the elimination of the freedom of speech, in the demonization of political opponents, in the acceleration with regard to an EU army, in the opposition against democratic governments of Poland and Hungary, in the sabotage of Brexit. We see it in the creation of an enemy image of Russia. It are all rearguard actions of a union which already failed. It's a union of happy migrants that profit from our welfare state and miserable citizens who are just good enough to pay the bill but are silenced about their grievances. Where is the outrage in the EU? It's not there. This union creates more problems than it solves. And we have seen a debt crisis, a migrant crisis, and now a crisis in political freedoms. What started as a project to progress peace through trade has deranged into a suppressive totalitarian instrument of a globalist elite. That is the true character of the EU. The EU has no future. The future of Europe is to the nation states and its people.
Die Früchte des Wirkens von Soros haben sich als überaus giftig erwiesen. Denn als Finanzspekulant versteht er unter Demokratie nichts anderes als die Errichtung einer globalen, finanzmarktkonformen Demokratur, deren Strukturen ihm erlaubt haben, in der Vergangenheit ganze Staaten der Reihe nach finanziell auszuplündern. Und seine mit vielen Milliarden Dollar dotierte Open Society Foundation spielt dabei eine wichtige Rolle. Mit ihren zig Unterorganisationen ist sie in über 100 Ländern der Welt tätig, subversiv tätig. Wie ein Krake mit vielen Fangarmen unterstützt das Geld der Open Society entweder direkt oder indirekt radikale Gruppen, sowohl linke als auch rechte. Flankiert von Frontorganisationen der CIA, hat Soros mit seiner Open Society in fast einem Dutzend Staaten mit sogenannten Farben- oder Themenrevolutionen Regierungen gestürzt und pro-westliche Regime an die Macht gebracht. Diese haben dann die Wirtschaft und Bevölkerung ihrer Länder den neoliberalen Wölfen der globalisierten Märkte zum Fraß vorgeworfen. Davon zeugt die desolate soziale Lage in den von Soros heimgesuchten Ländern. Denn Chaos, das ist das Geschäftsmodell von Soros. Total verrückt ist dabei, dass Soros trotz alledem immer noch als Wohltäter und Menschenfreund gefeiert wird.
have a full faith in our intelligence agencies. Whoops, they just turned off the light. That must be the intelligence agencies.
Мы видим, что в Соединенных Штатах есть силы, которые с легкостью готовы принести в жертву российско-американские отношения, в жертву своим амбициям в ходе внутриполитической борьбы. Готовы жертвовать интересами своих союзников, как в Европе, так и на Ближнем Востоке.
Sugar is toxic. All of the diseases of alcohol, type 2 diabetes, fatty liver disease, and brain problems, we are now seeing in children. And they don't drink alcohol. But boy, oh boy, do they consume sugar. Right now, we have 412 million diabetics walking the planet. That is 7% of the world's population. And that will likely go up to 700 million by the year 2030 if we do nothing. The food industry and the sugar industry has actually impacted in a very negative way the knowledge and the research that went on 45 years ago that led to this premise that it's all about calories, that it's all about saturated fat, that it's all about how much you eat and how little you burn. We now know that that was a canard. The sugar industry and the processed food industry have basically, shall we say, lined the pockets of specific health professionals to exonerate sugar and come down on saturated fat as the primary nutritional demon. Sugar beverages are only 37% of the added sugar in our diet. 16% are in things that we refer to as sweet or dessert, ice cream, candy, cake. That means that 49% of the added sugar is in foods we didn't know had it, such as salad dressing, barbecue sauce, hamburger buns, hamburger meat. When you go to a restaurant, you don't know what they put in there. So it is impacting you. It may be impacting you in ways you don't know. So you can see that this is not because of calories. This is not because fructose has a caloric profile. It's because it has a biochemical profile which is very much akin to alcohol. And it is for these reasons that this molecule fructose, and therefore sugar, is toxic, unrelated to its calories. So now we have the knowledge and now we have the data about sugar and its toxicity and its abuse, its ubiquity and its negative impact on society. It meets all the criteria for regulation in some fashion. Diabetes, type 2 diabetes, can be reversed if you catch it early enough. If you've had it for 10 years, it's a different story. But if you're relatively recent into type 2 diabetes, you can reverse it. But you can't reverse it until you fix your liver. And you can't fix your liver until you fix your food. In 2002, the World Health Organization put together a document, and in that document, they say very specifically that sugar is a major, if not the cause, of chronic metabolic disease and obesity.
I am 12 years old and I weigh 212 pounds. They normally say that I'm just supposed to eat healthier and exercise a lot more, which is what I am doing. But my weight has mostly stayed the same.
This whole generation of kids, they're doing their best. They're torturing themselves to do the cure that we tell them, and it's the wrong cure. And we're blaming the willpower, the moral fortitude of these kids, and it's a crime.
If there's a moment in time marking the start of the obesity epidemic, it's 1977, the McGovern Report. Expert testimony before the Committee on Nutrition and Human Needs warned Senator George McGovern that obesity would soon be the #1 form of malnutrition in the United States. The committee issued the very first dietary goals for Americans, noting that our diet had become overly rich in fatty meats, rich in saturated fats and cholesterol, and rich in sugar. The egg, sugar, dairy, and beef associations, with sales of their products in danger, united and flat out rejected the McGovern Report. They even demanded a rewrite. Instead, they encouraged Americans to buy more food with less fat. And so, the 1980s began with a new health doctrine and a brand new market. Every food product imaginable re-engineered to be low in fat.
When you take the fat out of the food, it tastes like cardboard. Food industry knew that. So they had to do something to make the food palatable. So what'd they do? Dumped in the sugar.
Fructose, the sweet part of sugar, can only be processed in the liver. When your liver is pushed to the max, the pancreas comes to the rescue by producing excess amounts of a hormone called insulin.
Insulin is the energy storage hormone. Insulin turns sugar into fat for storage. That's insulin's job.
High levels of insulin can also block your brain from receiving the signal that you're full. The problem is, sugar isn't just in cookies and desserts.
If you go to the supermarket, there are 600,000 food items, and 80% of them have added sugar.
A lot of people think that they can just switch from sugar to artificial sweeteners. Diet this, diet that, Splenda, aspartame. But if it triggers hormonal responses that cause you to produce more insulin, they make you crave more, they make you hungry, that you think sugar's on the way, your brain's like, oh, wait a minute, I think sugar's coming, I tasted it. So low sugar, low fat, diet foods, they're dangerous and they're actually disease producing as well.
When you consume sugar naturally, that is in fruit, you're getting the fiber that you need to
mitigate the negative effects. Am I worried about fruit? No. But am I worried about fruit juice? Oh, you bet. Because when you take the fiber out, you might as well be drinking a Coke.
Food addiction is a real thing. The studies show that your brain lights up with sugar just like it does with cocaine or heroin. In fact, sugar is 8 times more addictive than cocaine. So if you start your baby early on addictive, highly sugary foods, they're going to become addicted.
The food industry knows that the earlier they introduce these foods to children, to infants, the more likely they will have branded them for the future.
And every generation of kids born after 1980 has grown up surrounded by these highly addictive foods.
Every store these days has junk food at the checkout, right at the eye level of your kids.
The food industry infiltration of the schools is deplorable. When we release our children into the care of schools, we shouldn't expect them to eat unsafe food that will make them sick. We're paying a very dear price for letting the food industry act at will and recruiting our children as loyal customers.
We need to come together as a society to protect our children and make it easier for parents to feed their child more healthfully.
If you want to do one thing and only one thing, get off of sugar. Sugar is a deadly metabolic poison. Sugar is the leading cause of Alzheimer's. Sugar is a major cause of cancer, a major cause of heart disease, a major cause of diabetes. This is, it's a major cause of colds and flu. You can eat 1 teaspoon of sugar. Within 2 hours, your immunity will be reduced by 50%. 1 cola drink has about 10 to 12 teaspoons. So you eat 1 to 2 teaspoons, your body is going to be in biochemical chaos for 6 to 8 hours. So if you eat sugar in the morning, put some sugar in your coffee or have a breakfast cereal with a contained sugar, and then have more sugar at lunch and more sugar in the evening, guess what? Your body is going to be in biochemical chaos 24 hours a day. Well, your immune system is your #1 defense against cancer. So if every day you're constantly lowering your immunity because you're eating sugar, you're going to make yourself more susceptible to cancer. Cancer cells eat only one food, and that's sugar. So if you eat sugar, you're feeding the cancer. So if you have cancer, you have to be off of all sugar. And if you want to prevent cancer, be off of all sugar. Health is when all of your biochemistry is balanced and all your chemistry is working right. When you eat sugar, you throw that balance out for 6 to 8 hours. Sugar is very key, and not eating sugar is very key to making yourself healthy.
It's very high up and stationary at the moment. Beautiful.
Una cámara de seguridad con una vista panorámica de este sitio turístico importante registró cómo una esfera luminosa se acercaba rápidamente pasando por encima de las cataratas.
Right now, there are 131 active deep underground military bases in the United States. There's 1,477 of them worldwide. Each one is built with sophisticated methods, what you'd call high-tech. We have nothing like this on the surface. The public basically has been totally lied to. We're considered stupid or even moronic in some cases. Groom Lake is where the infamous Area 51, S4, S2, a CIA base, it was later become the most secret base in the United States. It employs over 18,000 workers. We built 9 underground military bases there, roughly 4¼ cubic miles hollowed out underground. I was involved in building another base onto, we were in the process of the early stages of building. We drilled 4 large tunnel-like holes. Some of them ran 2½ miles under the surface. The equipment kept coming up broken. So we wanted to go down, we wanted to send somebody down there, a human observer, or human observers in this case, to find out what was going on. The large alien grays had been encamped there for as best as believed possible about 400 or 500 years. It had been one of their internal bases. And we drilled holes right on top of it. All the stinking air, all the black sooty air came right out as soon as the first hole was sunk, and all this soot came up. And in this process, I was lowered down the basket of one of these holes, and about from me to this elderly woman here in the front was sitting a 7-foot-tall alien gray. The stench was worse than the worst garbage can you can imagine. The entity was absolutely horrible. In the process, one of them did this. All I remember is that he just kind of waved his hand in front of his chest, and the next thing I know, this blue beam hit me and just literally opened me up like a fish. 66 Secret Service agents, crack troops, lost their lives because the government, our United States government, lied, did not tell us anything about the alien threat. There's a war underneath there, and I'm talking dead serious. It's been going on since that time. Since late August of 1979, our military, the Russian military, basically the militaries of the world, have been in constant conflict with the outer space alien. The small gray, the large gray, the reptilians, the whole thing. The alien agenda is the complete takeover of this planet, the killing off of 5, 6 to 7/8 of the world's population by the year 2029. U.S. military has known about this for 45 years. They've told no one. Probably the reason I got shot to pieces and 11 attempts on my life is I am a direct threat to the entire system. The New World Order, the alien agenda, is one and the same. It's world takeover and the decimation of the population of this planet. There are 9 races of alien populations. To look at a human being as a bag of food. They use the glandular secretions of animals and human beings as a mixture of the vitamins for their food. What can we do about it? Right now, if we do nothing, we can do nothing about it, and it'll continue to go on. Basically, we'll be led in the dark, and you'll keep seeing more and more people disappear. I am asking you to seriously do enough homework that you can go out in through the public record, through the congressional records, find out who's voting for what, and go from there. The world takeover plans of the New World Order must not be allowed to happen. That includes the name, the New World Order. That was purposely used, folks, because most of us have been lazy. We have not read our history books. Things have been omitted. Throw out basically what you've learned. I'm not asking you to believe me. I'm asking you to re-educate each one of yourselves. An uninformed populace is a populace in slavery.
our mind is dreaming, and it's dreaming based on the beliefs we have. And this is when we begin to notice this is a problem, is when those dreams in our mind, the scenarios we're running, are very emotional and negatively emotional. That's when we start wreaking havoc emotionally in our life and our relationships. So that's where we figure out what's going on in our mind is a problem, because it's causing us to react emotionally to stuff that very often isn't even true, and we figure out we want to change this. And so the antidote to that is awareness, or self-awareness more specifically, is about having the perspective that allows you to wake up from that scenario of a dream running in your mind. There's lots of different places we can apply awareness, and usually we apply awareness to being or paying attention to what other people are doing. What is their body posture? What is their tone of speech? What is their facial expression? And we learn to read people, or we learn to read situations. And a person can be very aware of what goes on in the room or with someone else. We're used to doing this all the time. We are not used to doing this kind of observation on ourselves. And the reason awareness is so critical is if you aren't aware of what's going on in you, you have very little chance of changing it. Awareness of the kinds of thoughts we dream within each belief scenario that we're running. Awareness that those thoughts may not be true. Awareness that they only appear true from the perspective of that certain identity we're adopting for the moment. That they don't even exist when we adopt another perspective. So awareness of the subtleties of these elements at play in our imagination and how they pull us into different emotional states and emotional reactions. Why cultivate self-awareness? Why cultivate a state of mindfulness? Because it's going to change how you feel emotionally. And how does it do that? If you want to look at it in a more analytical way, you can look to quantum mechanics physics, wherein when you put your attention on something, such as an experiment, that actually changes the outcome of the experiment. And this happens in your mind. When you put your attention on what's going on in your mind in a mindful way, an aware way, and conscious attention, it changes what's going on there. The thought doesn't have the same impact. The emotion isn't the same. So there's a direct, immediate benefit. You may not see it right away, but change has begun to happen once you become self-aware or practice even moments of self-awareness. Awareness, and by that I mean self-awareness of what goes on in your mind, your emotions, your physical body posture, how you're feeling, the way you're behaving, the words that are coming out of your mouth, the mood you're in, how you're treating other people, how you're treating yourself, the thoughts you're believing. One of the ways this happens is by being this observer, I'll call neutral observer of your mind. Your perspective when you're in a mindful state is to observe the mind running these stories and scenarios. And you're essentially standing outside the bubble of what your mind is doing, going, wow, there's a show going on there. You are not in the show. You're not being carried for the ride. You're outside that story, observing it, what the mind's conjuring up. And that in itself is a major change, because you're now watching your mind dream from that perspective of neutral observer in that mindful state. You're not going to believe the thoughts that are passing through, or you're not as likely to believe them, or you're not going to believe them as much. And if you don't believe those thoughts, you're not going to react emotionally in the same way. It's worth taking time to build these skills. And from this neutral observer perspective, you can consider other options in how you behave, what you say, what you're going to believe. And you're going to look at things differently, and therefore you're going to think and interpret things differently. And your emotional reactions will be different. All because your perspective has shifted outside the dream formed by belief. Live more presently in the here and now, and less in these virtual dreams in our mind. To enjoy more the moment you're in, instead of be distracted by what you're imagining you're in. And to do that, you've got to wake up from the dreams your mind is dreaming.